Always, there's a good time for, first for everything.
First for everything.
Right. So, talking about the record, you've mentioned a few times, you've described it in different ways. One of them is you called it a mood record.
Yeah, I think most of them are.
So yes, I think if thinking about it, you could make that case. But unpack that a little for us. How is this a mood record, perhaps different than the mood on Lust for Life?
Well, I mean, they're all mood records, I think, in the way that they're not like single driven, which is not a bad thing, but it's more conceptual in the way there's kind of like an overarching, theme or feeling. Like I think with Norman, it starts a little bit lighter and then ends with a song called Hope, which is a bit darker and questionable. So I like to kind of think that it starts with laughter and then ends with a little bit of like tears.
But there's always, I mean, there is on this record, and certainly others of yours. There's you take people through, kind of a story. However loosely you want to define that. And I suspect I know the answer to this question, but I'm asking anyway because I think it's important. You still look at albums as a body of work. Am I right about that?
I look at my albums like that.
And the difference being today, particularly the way people consume music.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely still pop albums that I think have real narratives of "Thank You Next" or something by Ariana.
Right.
But it's more traditionally that would be I would feel like having a real narrative would be more in that singer-songwriter thing.
Yeah.
Or like a more alternative.
Yeah.
Smash.
There's so much of this record is in some way informed by artists whom you name check. Particularly those from we could imagine from Laurel Canyon. And I'm wondering why is that music for you so evocative?
Well, my sister and I lived in Laurel Canyon for most of our time here. And that was purposefully, just because
of the history.
Yeah, we like the idea of like Crosby, Stills, and Nash, and like that communal getting togetherness. And then one of our friends, Jonathan Wilson, had a Laurel Canyon revival night, and Father John Misty was up there, and so I was trying to get the stuff I couldn't get from New York, and just kind of, and also I just love that '60s sound, Mamas and the Papas, California Dreamin', and
there's the run up to the last record. You wrote something about how that was a transitional period for you, making that record and putting that record out. And I'm wondering if that transition is continuing, or whether you've kind of decided that's done and now I'm moving on.
Yeah, I think everything's sort of a continuous evolution. So, Lust for Life, there were some more, for me, more politically toned songs, like a song called Change, where I was kind of wondering, how much can I change? How much can people change? Like their baseline nature. And that kind of came up because at the time me and Rick Knowles we were watching the general elections and the elections, and we were like, oh God, we're like, there's going to be a real change, and really got me thinking. And then I had a song called When the World Was at War, We Just Kept Dancing, and God Bless America and all the beautiful women in it. So it was a difference for me in the way that I kind of had been writing about the past, and then I kind of spread up to a more present moment time for myself. And so for Norman, I'm even more present, where I'm talking about dropping a pin to the parking lot to have my boyfriend come meet me, and references to iPads and little things, which is for me, that's modernity.
The sound of this record, and actually even before I get to the sound, was there a song on the album? Usually there seems to be something that's a bit of a fire starter. You know, that starts the whole process.
Yeah.
For you, which song on the record started the process for you?
I think there were two. When I met Jack Antonoff, I only had one song fully written that I had kind of been journaling for about 3 years. And that was Hope is a Dangerous Thing for a Woman Like Me to Have, but I have it. And I sang it to him a cappella, and then he heard it, and then he played along with me the second time I sang it. And it's like prodigious in that way that he memorized and it's 7 minutes. So 12, it's like, you've got your ruby, you've got your sapphire, and I'm like, then I did like, which was just more sweet, sugary. And I thought, okay, so that's something, that's in the middle, that's definitely 6.
Yeah.
And then eventually we did Venice Bitch, which was like, it ended up being a 10-minute jam.
That's got a whole thing going on, which
Yeah.
I want to ask you about, but go ahead.
Yeah, and I thought, okay, so that's what the sound of the record was at the time. But it's hard to fully get there, you know, like, without spending more and more time getting into that SoCal sound.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought that's where we were going, like more Chili Peppers.
Yeah.
But we ended up just not fully producing everything, so it stayed in this more singer-songwriter type of vein, which I was really happy with. I thought it was going to go one way or another.
Well, and you know, one of a couple of things that come to mind when you listen to the record is there was definitely a lighter sensibility to these songs. You were talking about, you know, cracking yourself up, you know, in the process. It seems like some of these songs were kind of written and recorded with a smile.
Yeah.
Am I incorrect in my thinking there?
Yeah, I smile through most of my shows.
Yeah.
Like, because I start with Norman, so yeah, I sang through that recording and sang through Venice. And yeah, and I've done that on other records as well, but I think also just the pace of it is so little, like mid-tempo as well. It's easy to like, you're almost like talk singing it or singing it the way you talk it, so
It's
like
very patient.
Yeah.
The record is patient, you know. And which is it's fantastic. It's almost arresting in in the pace, and the sonics, particularly Venice Bitch. I don't know why I hesitated when I said that, but I did nonetheless. The outro, which goes for a period of time and through a bunch of changes. I know that on Ultraviolence, you yourself spent a whole lot of time messing with mixes and sounds, and does that carry through for you? Is that something that you like to do?
Well, with Ultraviolence, it was not intentional because we recorded on Dan Auerbach's console in Nashville, and his engineer never locked and loaded the spring reverb that accompanied every vocal. So when I got it back to Robert in Santa Monica, we had to recreate that exact reverb, which is why the mixing took 3 months. And I have like, you know, eagle eyes, hawk ears, whatever you want. I have demoitis. So I was like, here's the demo on my iPhone, and you have to make it sound like this. So that was my. I mean, I'm definitely heavily involved in like the soundscaping.
Do you prefer to work quickly? Is it better to be a little imperfect but get kind of the right emotion rather than laboring over stuff?
I mean, there's layers to it. I'm just grateful if anything comes quickly to me. You know, like just melodically. So if I get like a chorus in my mind, like, oh God, I miss you on my lips. It's me, a little Venice bitch. That's kind of all I need. So I'm grateful if I even catch like a little couplet.
So if you get that, that's enough to build around.
Yeah, and I'll get more sometimes, but yeah, I think Jack would tell you like I'm a one-take person, pretty much exclusively.
Relaxing.
I get very like,
Because the one thing you don't want to have happen, quite frankly, is you don't want to labor on something so long that you start to hate it.
Yeah.
Has that happened? Has that happened to you?
I get impatient with myself.
Yeah.
Mostly only during recording. Because, like, I know how good certain things can be. So, can't get it. I'm like, oh my God. But it was interesting watching a couple of other people in with Jack when I had some days off.
What did you observe?
Well, randomly Justin Timberlake was doing something with Jack, and he would like do a take and he'd be like, fuck this shit. Another take and he'd be like, go do it. And I was like, oh my God, that's everybody. So that was enlightening.
This is already worth it, right? On The Greatest, you sing about missing rock and roll.
Right.
Do you think rock and roll has changed? Is it gone away in your mind? Is it different than you remember?
I think I'm bummed out that I was in New York and I missed like Kings of Leon coming around and like the Strokes and stuff. Like everyone had this cool bar that was really hard to get into on like 3rd Street or something. I think I was maybe too young at the time to get in, but that I was kind of thinking of that vibe when I meant rock, but also like that idea of like CBGBs and stuff too, and just kind of that like, let's go to a show. Which actually I do go. I go to a lot of shows.
You do?
Yeah, in LA.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And we're going to talk a little bit about kind of geography and environment and what that means to you. Before we get to that, you do Sublime's Doing Time on this record. Were you a fan? Were you a fan of the band? What is it about that song in particular that attracted you?
Well, they asked me to do that one.
That's a good reason.
But I mean, Santeria, you know, I mean, Wrong Way, like so many different songs. I mean, like that's one of the bands where it's like you just, like for me, I mean, I know I'll never be as cool as Sublime, so I just kind of, I just love them. I actually saw Troy yesterday, his Bradley's wife.
Yes.
She brought me a box set and said, to Lana, love Troy, and then I wrote to Troy, love Lana, and she was like, we only wanted you to do it. So I was like, phew. You know, so.
Nice. What does a song have to have for you to want to cover it? What attracts you to songs?
I think something super sexy, like Hotel California, Wicked Games, Doing Time.
Yeah, which I think you did that with Chris Isaac at the Bowl. Am I right about that?
Yeah.
Tell me, so tell me about how cool that had to be cool.
Yeah, it was cool. I met him in Nashville when we were in Nashville a couple of years ago. I think he's there some of the time, and him and his manager Cheryl came and said hi.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was just thinking of him like in terms again of that California sound. Like we wanted to continue the Friends and Family tour throughout the whole leg, but we only really got to do it in Berkeley, Jones Beach, and the Bowl.
The Bowl.
So
yeah.
He fit right in.
Yeah. If I understand it, you would be willing to do like an entire covers record. Is that something you've talked about?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, like I have some favorite songs.
Yeah.
Like I really like Gordon Lightfoot, like a couple of, or like Perfect Day by Lou Reed, or again California Dreaming. Yeah.
You're on your way. So we talked about California and Southern California. If you listen to the songs, I actually made a list here. You name check like the entirety of the Los Angeles basin. Laurel Canyon.
I'm a hipster.
No, that's not where I was going. Laurel Canyon, Venice, Santa Ana, Topanga, Malibu, Long Beach, Newport, Sunset Boulevard, Hollywood and Vine, PCH, and the 405.
Yeah. Well, it's where I spend most of my time. I drive for like a solid 4.5 hours a day. Like I drive down to Encinitas and back.
Yeah. Do it for Encinitas. But what is it? More specifically, what is it about Southern California? You've been here a while now. We've talked about your love for artists from Laurel Canyon and that sound. What is it about this place that inspires you?
Well, I'm such a sun chaser. I'm like water baby. If my feet aren't in the water, I'm so grouchy. So I'm in the water all year round, December, January. It's really the weather.
Yeah.
And I hike like hours and hours a day. I'm very spoiled. It's like, that's a good when you're not on the road, that's like the real part of
Yeah.
the dream.
You used a word earlier, and it's something you've used to describe your songwriting. You described yourself as a chronicler, someone who what does that mean to you? What do you chronicle?
My life. Yeah, journaling.
How does that help you?
So it's what I write about. That's exclusively it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unless I come up with some elaborate something or other that I throw into the mix and do like something more festive than I normally would.
Yeah. There's an entire kind of generation of artists, whether it's Ariana Grande or Billie Eilish,
Yeah.
Others who have acknowledged you as an influence on what they do. What does that kind of acknowledgement mean to you?
It's awesome.
What is it about what they do that inspires you?
Well, Ariana's energy level.
You just worked with her not too long ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, she's very good at not thinking twice. I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm wrong and she questions herself, but I'm very much in my head. She's, like, very much in her body. Like, you can see it, like, that baseline physicality. She's just super fast and on fire all the time. And I am when I'm, like, running to the market or, like, going to the beach, but when I'm writing, I'm like not thinking quickly. I'm more like thinking more in stanzas.
Yeah, yeah. So you have a collaborator on this record, a guy who produced the record.
Yeah.
I think I'd like him to
Join
join the conversation. So before we do, we're going to get a chair up here. I think my friend Bryson is about to deliver a chair. So you all know this guy, 4-time Grammy-winning singer-songwriter, producer. First came to prominence in 2012 with the band Fun. He's been songwriting partner to Sarah Bareilles, Taylor Swift, Lord Sia, as well as Lana Del Rey. Along the way, he's released his own albums under the name Bleachers. Please welcome Jack Antonoff. So how did you guys meet? How did you first meet?
At a party.
It's usually the way it works.
Yeah.
What was
No, seriously.
Yeah.
At a party.
What was the musical connection? How did you guys get connected musically? How did you start working together? What prompted that?
He begged me.
Drew?
I begged her.
Yeah. Yeah.
We had lunch, and you just kicked around, and then after lunch, you went back on tour, and then begged me, and then texted me like, well, maybe I could come back to New York.
I thought we worked together the next day, no?
No. I had to keep begging for a little while.
I came back.
She came back
to New York.
And it's always weird when you get in a room with someone because you just don't know, and it can go horribly wrong.
Right.
I'm sure that's happened to you, maybe here or there. It actually usually goes horribly wrong because it's a terribly personal and weird thing to do. And actually, I collaborated in the past, but I think that first day when we were together, I think that might have been like the most prolific musical day of my life. Like,
Yeah. How's that? Why was it different?
Well, she wrote every word you hear, and melody of Hope is a dangerous thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, sometimes, like, when you're collaborating with someone, you're thinking of a jumping off point, you're like, well, I have this idea, blah, blah, blah. And she was like, well, I have this idea, and then just did that. And, that's one of my favorite songs, regardless of anything.
Yeah.
And so to hear it come out of thin air was a really profound experience. So we put it down, and we wrote Love Song right away, and then a bunch of other things that didn't get released, but...
No, we wrote more. Remember, like, how we were playing with the iterations today?
So
we had an idea for the title.
Yeah.
For the title track, not for what it was supposed to be called, but definitely for the "You're just a man, it's just what you do."
But it was the hey thing. Hey, I heard you're back. I heard you're back in town again. And I just, there's a lot of, it's scary to free associate, but I felt really comfortable doing it with you.
Yeah, yeah. Because one of the ways that you and I talked when you released your last record, and one of the things you said about that was writing songs for your own project was the sound of one person going crazy in a room alone. And I'm wondering how do you change as a songwriter when you collaborate?
Oh, so it's, even if you stumble upon the sound.
Patent pending.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was also,
Okay.
so that was nice just to, because records live in spaces and.
Sure. Well, and sonically, I mean, there is a through line here. This record hangs together. You say what you will about lyrics or otherwise, but sonically, there's a through line.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, Lana's like really difficult. When she's
Finish the sentence.
when she doesn't, like, she has crazier ears than, it's interesting, like usually, like if I'm working on something I can imagine what it's going to sound like and then I can live around it. And I think one thing that's inspiring to work with her is she can't really dig it unless it's it.
Yeah, I have one purpose, and that's to serve the structure of the song that I see hanging in the balances. I don't care about really what anybody thinks at all.
And you hear that, and that's what you see it as well. When I read something about you initially played. Anything we need to know, or
No.
Okay.
There's just so many good stories. It's like I couldn't even begin to tell them. We just hung out. Seriously, I think that's why people have connected with the album.
Yeah.
But that was all Lana just, hearing things and just feeling good about them, and just even little things like I'd play something and it would be my nature to want to maybe do it better, and she was just no, it's a vibe, and that's changed me a lot in terms of how I have done things since. Yeah.
I mean, you were very clear in things that I've read about this that this was Lana taking the lead on this. This was not you coming in as the producer and saying we have to do thus and such.
There was nothing. We just sat in a room, me, her, and Laura.
Yeah.
There was no, which I think is the best way to make records.
Yeah.
So there wasn't really, I've said this before, but it was like when I was a kid, we were in a room. It happened to be a nice studio, but it wasn't much different than any room, besides that we could capture things and make them sound beautiful. And three people were there, and whatever was cool in the room is what was cool. And we didn't, I don't remember anyone really coming by.
Except for my sister.
Well, that's implied.
Yeah.
But like there wasn't a big energy of like what's going on in culture, or what are we touching on, what are we not. It was just if it felt good. There was conversations about Laurel Canyon and stuff, but also keeping it towards the future, picking up on where that left off.
Yeah. So there was, or was there discussion about some of these bands that you name check in the songs and the sounds that they made? Did you guys talk about that at all?
7 months in.
7 months in.
Yeah.
How long was the process beginning to end?
It never really started, never really ended. Feel me?
A year and 9 months.
But there's so much like I don't know. I don't even. There's just all these.
We're still, obviously
things.
still right. You never stop.
Right.
By the way,
Right.
I never finish a record unless I know exactly what the first song of the next record will be. Because I don't like to have my bank empty.
Is it what I think it is?
You can say it louder. It's okay. Talk amongst yourselves.
Oh, that's the shit.
Okay, so there is another record coming. Is that what we're given to understand here?
God willing.
Yeah.
Who
Yeah.
knows when, but it's kind of like, again, like having Hope and Norman. Like if I have that first and last, I just feel
Right.
like, okay,
Right.
I can come back to it.
Yeah.
Because he's in New York as well.
Yeah, and again, going back to the kind of the sound of these things, is that something you want? Is that a thread you want to continue? Is exploring, this particular kind of approach and sound of your music, that patient kind of almost languid.
I'd love to get out of it, honestly.
You would.
But it's like, it's just so much of myself. Yeah. Like, I mean, I love to go to like rock bands and stuff, or jam bands.
Yeah.
My songs are kind of like verse, chorus. So, but
Do you remember when when we were trying to get out of it when we were talking about the club a lot? Do you remember this? And there was that whole theory about the truck going down to the club.
yeah.
It was a really interesting moment.
It sounds good. Don't go with that.
We called it Laurel on top, Migos on the bottom.
Get it?
Maybe in another lifetime.
Yeah. I mean, not this one, but.
Wow.
We'll look forward to that. We'll look forward to that. So,
Lana's making a documentary about what dick I am in the studio.
It's like Spinal Tap, but for Jack. Again.
Can you be difficult?
Well, it's just like her and Laura would just make fun of me because I so love I like to make Lana's just so she's got her phones and her vape and it's just it's so great. I just love to just do a stick before we work and then I sort of fucked myself.
Before I work.
Yeah, I think it's nice. And then I just at somewhere in the middle of the record it turned to where
Me and Laura.
I had this lizard once, and one day the crickets ate it. They killed it.
The crickets.
The crickets?
That's very Chuck. And that was what it felt like. I was sort of
You were the lizard?
and I was just attacked by everyone.
He would basically make fun of what me and Laura would wear every day. And so we just gave him a little taste of his own dorky medicine.
This is really much better than I imagined.
What was cool though is that I just remember a lot of making fun of each other, but then we recorded Venice Bitch in the middle of that, and that was fun.
There's I think it's one really amazing thing about Jack the Lizard is that he's very, he really lets a woman have her own rhythm. So if I come in hot, but then I cool all the way down, he's like, that's cool, I'm going to go have a sandwich. And I'm like, good. And then he'll come back and he's like, how you feeling? And I'm like, fantastic, let's do this. And so, I think it's because, I feel like female songwriting has its own hot and coldness and happy and sadness. And every now and then I think people, for me, they've criticized, well, how can you be happy and sad at the same time? And I'm like, I don't know, I just, Monday I care, Tuesday I don't. And
Wow.
so
Human.
Jack's,
It's human.
It is, but there's not always room to be, more delicate. And so Jack is very, accommodating to, a more,
Well, I get really depressed.
So was this a case of one person was up, the other person was down in varying sort of alternating patterns?
No, we were always on the same wavelength.
Yeah,
You were?
Always, yeah.
And there was this is not a joke, but there'd be food, soda, and I think that's an important thing. This same way the sound of an album happens. There's certain things you start to eat and drink, and it's not a bit. And when things get sort of dark, you head to the kitchen and see if that changes things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Switch it up.
Yeah.
I think
we never let ourselves get too stuck.
Right. Is there one that, if I can ask you, is there one song on the album that you guys could kind of agree on is perfectly emblematic of this collaboration?
Okay, on the count of three, I'm ready to do that. Are we gonna say 1, 2, 3?
1, 2, 3. The
Norman.
greatest.
Jack's a bit more brave and antagonistic. I just like the richness of a cool pool.
Okay, so
Now,
now
I wanna
we
say my
need to
praise.
unpack that a little. Why did you choose your song? What is it that you think is emblematic?
Because I think it's miraculous that I got to Norman. That it's that I can laugh. I mean, now I can laugh at almost anything. And I think whether you're a writer or whatever, I mean, whatever you do, it's like if you can kind of laugh through it, it's really cool. And in that way, it's linked to Hope is a Dangerous Thing, because if you can kind of see that light, you know, as well, then it's just it just takes a lot of hard work. Like, to me, the album is like emblematic of craftsmanship, which is not. It's not like everyone would have to put that on a pedestal, but for me, I just think it's cool that I get to participate in that kind of like melodic weaving, and because like I like to work with my hands anyways, but I'm not good in that way at anything building wise, except for like.
Oh.
Let's see. I feel like, can you call me poetry? We're gonna. Girlies. Lana, how do you get your hair so shiny? Why do you get your hair so shiny?
My ears and my We're gonna do these to a clip. Oh. This is my amazing band. Byron. Wait.
Yes.
It's Al, that's Ash. We thought we'd try and make it as close to the show as we
Dream
can.
team.
We're gonna do Norm.
Yes!
Yes.